I'd like to call to order the December 10th, 2020 Plan Commission meeting. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Brink.
Here.
Aletsky.
Present.
Ford.
Here.
Culhane.
Present.
Hanson.
Here.
Kays.
Here.
And Spire, Dolly, and Dargits Johnson are absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Third item on the agenda is invitation for public comment participant submittal. If there's anything not on the agenda that someone wishes to talk about, there will be time at the end of the agenda, so please submit your request to city staff. Then moving on to item 4 is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion in a second?
So moved. Second.
Hanson will second.
I have a motion and a second. Can I get a vote?
Brink.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Culhane.
Aye.
Hanson.
Yes.
Kays.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 5 is approval of the minutes from the November 10th meeting. Could I get a motion and a second?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Ford seconds.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or? Hearing none, I'll take a vote.
Kays.
Yes. Sorry.
Sorry, I switched it up. I'm going backwards now. Hanson.
Sorry.
Yes.
Culhane.
Yep.
Ford.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
Brink.
Yes. Motion carries. Moving on to item 6, the regular agenda. 6A is approval of the 2021 Board of Adjustment and Plan Commission meeting schedule. Brandy, will you present us with that schedule?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So I have this shared on Teams. This will be the schedule for the Board of Adjustment and the Plan Commission meetings for 2021. Just look ahead as in your own time, and if you know dates that you will not be here, you can let us know. Otherwise, it works out great the way that you guys are making us aware of the dates that you will not be here, and we appreciate the attendance that is always at these meetings, and especially as a volunteer board, we really appreciate you guys. So,
All right, thank you. Do we need to approve it, or is that just you?
yeah, let's take a
Can I get a motion and a
Motion,
second to
second.
approve the schedule?
So moved. Culhane.
Second case.
We have a motion and a second. Can I get a vote?
Brink.
Yes.
Aletsky.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Culhane.
Yep.
Hanson.
Yes.
Kays.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 6B is commission consideration of resolution number 2020-59, the plat of Lot 3, Block 2 of Ender's 3rd Edition to the Municipality of Watertown in the County of Connington, South Dakota. Brandy, will you take it over?
Yes, thanks, Jeff. So the owner of this property is Robert L. Endress, and he has submitted the plat of Lot 3, Block 2 of Ender's 3rd Edition. This area contains 6.74 acres, in which 1.78 acres will be dedicated as public right-of-way, because that includes 10th Avenue Southeast between 23rd Street and 26th Street. So it makes that connection. This property was previously annexed and zoned as C3 Highway Commercial, and so that was approved by City Council on September 21st of this year. And then the preliminary plan that this plat conforms to was approved by the Plan Commission on September 10th, 2020. And so in addition to this plat, there's the development agreement that includes all of the infrastructure improvements that'll be dedicated to the public. They do include a detention pond that will remain in private ownership and maintenance, which is why we have a BMP maintenance agreement attached as well, because that's how we handle the perpetual maintenance of these detention ponds in commercial and industrial areas, so that the city has the right to make sure that they're maintained properly, and then also call that they are, if there's any maintenance activities that need to be done, the city has the right to call that, to order that be completed. I think with that, if you guys have any questions, I'll gladly answer them.
Thank you for that. Is there a public hearing on plats?
No,
No, there's not. I didn't think so. So I don't need to open that. So it's just if the board has any questions for staff on this. Kind of as mentioned, we've kind of already looked at this through the preliminary plan. And it's because it has right of way is why it comes before us. If it didn't have the right of way, it could be administratively platted, correct?
right.
And does the staff doesn't see any issues with their right of way or their roads or any other requirements or getting some shaking heads, so that's good.
Yeah, it'll follow the standard process. We'll enter into the development agreement, and then we'll do the inspection, acceptance, and then the warranty period begins. So it'll follow the standard process.
Do we need?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Got a motion?
Second, Colleen.
We have a second. And just to clarify, do we need a motion on each of these three, or is this a motion for everything? Motion for everything? Okay.
Yep, just the one resolution.
Okay.
It was just attached odd because if you guys noticed that I added the development agreement later. So usually it just comes as that resolution number.
Yep.
So that's why it looks a little different.
Sounds good. We have a motion and a second. Can we get a roll call vote?
Yes. Kays,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Culhane,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Aletsky,
Yes.
Brink.
Yes. Motion passes. Moving on to item 6C, discussion of kennels with the Animal Control Board.
Thank you, Jeff. So this one, I'm actually going to turn over to Matt. It was at his request that we add it to the agenda. We've touched on this topic before, and then he's also invited some of the members of the Animal Control Board to be a part of the discussion and figure out how we want to handle the definition of kennels and how we regulate them in the zoning district, and then also in the animal control language in the ordinance as well.
Thanks, Brandy. We'll try to make this brief. Apparently Liam's getting bored. He's changing his background and bouncing up and down on his exercise ball. So, well, first of all, is Dan Miller in the room?
Yes.
Yeah, we're here, Matt.
Okay, Dr. Reeves there as well. Okay, and then it looks like Beth is online. Is Kristen around?
Yes. Yes, Kristen's
Okay.
here too.
Okay, so we have 4 of the members. I believe Mary Lynn wasn't able to make it. So, as you'll recall, this was a month or so ago. I brought forward just a discussion piece to the Plan Commission, just kind of relaying what the discussion had been like on this issue with the Animal Control Board, and just a kind of a brief overview of what what the board had landed on was the definition of kennel exists in 2 different places in our ordinance. Once in the Animal Control Ordinance, Title 3, and once in the Zoning Ordinance, Title 21. And as we look closer at the zoning ordinance definition, it's just slightly different than the Animal Control Ordinance definition, and it includes the word owned, which seems to imply that if you want to own more than the number identified in the definition, I believe it's 4 dogs, that the only place it shows up in the zoning ordinance is as a conditional use in the ag zone. 3 or more dogs, 4 or more cats. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't know
Three
the
or-
alphabet.
So the idea we wanted to bring forward to the Plan Commission was whether or not that was the intent of our ordinance, was to require anybody who wanted to own 3 or more dogs to only live in the ag zone, or whether that was an unintended outcome of that definition. And so there's a couple other tangential issues here. The other one is there's an ordinance in the animal control title regarding how close kennels can be to a neighbor, and that's something that should be discussed as well. But I think the first point we were hoping to get maybe some consensus on is whether or not we believe as a city we should have a set number of dogs or pets that somebody can own. And if we do believe that, and that was the intent of the way it's written in the zoning ordinance, then I would propose that, to be consistent with the way other municipalities handle it, is there would also be a separate ordinance that would explicitly state our limit. Because the way this is written, I think the Animal Control Board, and they're there to speak on their own behalf, but we've kind of come to the conclusion we feel like it seems like a backdoor way to limit the number of dogs or pets that somebody can have. So with that, I'll kind of open it up to whoever wants to jump in. I would ask Dr. Reed maybe to chime in as well.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, and thank you to the board. As the Animal Control Board, we kind of came to a consensus that we really don't necessarily want to limit the number of pets that somebody can own in the city of Watertown. I think we feel that there's other ordinances through nuisance of barking or sanitation, or if they're licensed, up to date on their rabies vaccines, that can be controlled. The other thing is I don't know how big a problem it really is. Talking to the animal control officer, he says he gets maybe 8 to 10 calls a year on somebody that maybe they feel has too many pets, and a lot of times that's a disgruntled neighbor that maybe isn't a pet owner as such. And from my own personal, I mean, I don't have too many clients that would meet that. If you did throw cats in there, I guess they would, but most of the people, their cats are kept indoors and don't go out at all on that. So I don't think it's a large problem, and as a board, I guess we were not recommending that we put a limit on how many pets are regulated within the city of Watertown. So we're looking for the definition of kennel to be a commercial endeavor, and that's the way most of the cities in South Dakota are doing it. Sioux Falls, Brookings, Aberdeen, Rapid City, I think they all, in their definition, it's for money or profit or a commercial endeavor when their definition of kennel is, and that's kind of what we're looking for here.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Todd?
Okay, well, I'll bring a perspective of history to this. I don't think it was necessarily a backdoor way of limiting the number of animals. I think it was very overt when these policies were written, many of them in the early 70s, and looked at in comprehensive reviews of the ordinances in the 80s and in the 90s. The language that is in the city of Watertown is consistent with a vast majority of most of the municipalities, not only in the state of South Dakota, but you'll see it in other states as well. And the question is why is that? Well, because pets are property, and property falls under general police powers of the state, which are then granted to the localities, and the zoning is a police power. We use zoning to regulate all kinds of things that happen in our life. How much stuff we have. How much stuff we have is based on how much land do you have to put buildings on in your, and how many garages or sheds that you can have on your property to control the amount of stuff you have. And pets are the same thing as people's stuff, even though pets have a more familial connection with some people. And so in some ways, I think the question is what is a commercial versus a non-commercial kennel? And I think that question does need to be answered. But on the flip side, you know, we say we have nuisance regulations and those types of things to prevent, you know, the number of dogs or cats in a certain place. I can attest historically in my career, I have been in places where there's been 22 dogs or 97 cats and 2 feet of excrement in the basement of the house, causing health issues, not only for the people that live there, but for the neighbors that are next to them. So I think realistically, there should be some number, whether it's 3 or 4 or 7. I think that's up for debate. But just to say we're going to go sky is the limit, I don't think most people would be okay with that, especially if they are creating outdoor runs that are within 50 feet of a house. And I've got 6 dogs, and if we look at you know, American Kennel Club standards, those things should be at least 6 foot by 10 foot for each dog. You're talking, you know, possibly, and it might not happen very often, but in some places where you have established neighborhoods and you have that. I'm not a dog hater, I'm not a cat hater. I'm just saying there is a reason for using zoning to restrict or regulate or manage the number of animals. It's animal safety, it's nuisance, and it's also the neighborhood that's in place and allowing individuals to dictate, you know, what is happening next door to them. And so I'm saying that I think there's an opportunity for a conversation here, but I think setting the sky as a limit is a non-starter for me. That's my opinion.
I've had neighbors and stuff that where their house is set back and they put the kennel right beside the other neighbor's house and they don't get to hear the barking 24/7, but the neighbor does, and there's nothing that they could do to make it stop.
One of the things that I think that 50-foot rule's been in for quite a while, and there isn't a lot in Watertown that you could do that on. And the way the definition is written, you could basically say a house is a kennel then if you had 4 pets in there. You can't get 50 feet away, and maybe the dog isn't causing a problem or anything, but as it's written now, it creates a problem. I mean, if you have a neighbor that doesn't like a dog at all, whether it's making a noise or not, you can say there's 50 foot. I think that's getting a little bit away from what we originally were coming for
okay.
too. I think one of the things we're trying to get is the definition of what a kennel is and whether, I'm sorry, I mean, it's, because that 50-foot rule's been it's been a stickler from the word go. I think one of the first places we'd like to start is to get the definition squared away as to what a kennel is, because is a kennel a structure that has a number of runs in it, or kennels inside? I mean, is it a building that has kennels in it that they're used for breeding, for boarding, for whatever? Is it a doghouse that has one? Is it a run out there? I've had people that have come up to City Hall. I mean, kennel is used as a general term for a lot of different things. I've had some people come up to get information on putting a fence around their yard. They were asked if they had a dog, and they said yeah, and she was told, well, you can't have a kennel that's within 50 feet of your neighbor's house. I don't know if they were referring to just the fact you're having a fence and a dog, that was a kennel and such on there too. So I think to begin with, where the fact that there's 2 definitions of kennel and then what a kennel is, and from the Animal Control Board, we'd like to have that kind of designated as a commercial venture, and then the 50-foot rule would come in at some other point. It's always been that 50-foot's been a challenge here, so I think the first thing and why we're here tonight is to get a definition of what a kennel is.
Do you have a recommendation of what you would like the definition of kennel to be? Or how you'd like it to be changed?
I think, the definitions are pretty close together right now, But I think you put in there that it's for, I mean, that there's money exchange, that it's a commercial endeavor is the thing for kennel. Then limiting the number of dogs or cats or pets could be done in another ordinance, I would say, on there, but I think you should, I don't know that you want to use the definition of a kennel as a way to limit the number of pets. I would like to see it as a commercial endeavor, and if it has to be in an ag zone, that would be fine.
Oh, go ahead. Matt.
I'm not arguing that point. I don't think, I think if we are gonna have a commercial kennel, have a commercial kennel section, if you're gonna have, the raising of and owning of your own personal property pet on a piece of property, and I think the discussion needs to be had from a community perspective is, do we want to be regulating the number of, pets a family can own? And so I think these are basically two conversations that have to go on in tandem. And so it's not just a simple fix of fixing the definition of kennel, because I think kennel is going to have a commercial connotation to it or a private connotation to it. And I think, it's not just the removal of one word. And I think this is great that we're having this conversation, but this is not something that I think that we're going to just get resolved in a 5-minute or 10-minute conversation.
And Jeff, too, Beth does have her hand up, and if we could do the hand on Teams, just so we keep it orderly. If you want.
I don't need an open, public hearing for this topic, so.
No, just
Yeah.
discussion
Yeah,
wise.
okay, so Beth, go ahead and.
Thank you. I guess Mark did a really good job of summarizing some of the things we've been challenged with, and I've given a lot of thought to this, and I do understand what Todd's saying, but as of right now, it is very unclear, both from a regulation standpoint, a compliance standpoint, and then where people live, all those different kinds of things, because I do believe the way it's written right now and the confusion that there is it does look like the zoning ordinance is a backdoor way to limit the number of pets if you turn around and look at what we have in the animal control ordinance. So that speaks to the point of clarifying some of these things. And we have not, I've been on the animal control board since Mayor Barger. Mayor Barger is the one who appointed me. So I've seen a lot of evolution of our animal control ordinances. And this one has come occasionally forward in terms of a number of pets. Previous city councils have not supported it. I just want you to know that. I can't speak for my cohorts, but previous city councils have been loath to actually limit the number of pets people could have. In looking at kennel definitions, for me personally, I do believe that commercial kennel, private kennel, and things like that are necessary. We also need to separate out under which ordinance does this fall? Are all the kennel ordinances going to be under zoning, or are there going to be kennel ordinances that come to play in the animal control ordinances? So I'm kind of throwing out a few more things. I look at a commercial kennel as kind of what states there.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Siri, come on, stop. Anyway, I look at the commercial kennel as what it is in the zoning ordinance minus the word owned. I think what you see in normal ordinances as far as kennels go, it's being groomed, conditioned, bred, whatever you want to say. The word owned is not there, and the part that's key is that they're offered for compensation. A nonprofit kennel would be like the Humane Society, which that has their own things that I consider, so I don't really want to deal with them. But a private kennel would be where the dogs or the cats are not raised for compensation. The thing that I think that people in town get confused about in terms of a kennel is primarily what people call kennels are what I would call a run, an exercise run. It's what is included the floor surface plus a cage around it where the animal can get some exercise that is exclusive of, it's not part of the sleeping area or the quote doghouse. So I think these kennel runs, or what I would call a run, is what gets confused in town for a kennel. So that's where there's so much, and a kennel can apply to private, nonprofit, to commercial, all those things comply. So it is confusing. But if we want to go with limiting the number of pets that we have, like Matt said, it should be very clear. But secondly, do we want to? I mean, if I had my way, if the world were perfect, I would change the definition or what pets are considered from property. I would take them out of property to give them a little bit more protection as a sentient creature that becomes part of our household. I'm just throwing out some facts now, and we do have the tools. The reason why we don't hear a lot about problems with dog kennels and things like that is because it is rare, and we only hear about them when there's a complaint. The 50-foot rule is a very valid issue for us in Ward C, where I am. I don't think there's any lots that could comply with 50 feet, even if they only owned one dog and wanted a kennel run, they would not be able to comply the way it's written right now. So to have the ordinance in two different places, zoning and animal control, that creates its own confusion. And the second thing is, yes, I agree that there needs to be a conversation in both cases about how many dogs do we want people to have and do we want to limit it. I lean towards allowing the ordinances to take care of the problems. But I understand where Todd's coming from in terms of, having some sense of reasonableness, but I think people can be reasonable. I mean, if you have a neighbor like you were talking about that had 99 dogs or whatever, that's way beyond reasonable. And even as the animal control board, as the police department, any of those kind of things, they would also see that as not being reasonable. And that's an issue that would have to be dealt with right away. But I could have 5 dogs and have had, so I've been breaking the law in Watertown, so don't tell anybody on me, but and never had a complaint. Nobody would even known that I had that many dogs unless they actually sat outside and counted them. We've had situations where somebody has had one dog and it barks its full head off all day long and all night long. And so that's a problem right there with one dog. So you can't say that the number of dogs is automatically going to equate to a problem. So that was the kind of comments I have right now.
Dan, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Again, I'm not looking for an argument here. I just think that what we need to do is I would recommend moving forward that you have representation from the Animal Control Board and representation from the Planning Commission to sit down and talk this issue through. I think anything that has to do with the structure or use of land should not be with the Animal Control Board. It's a zoning function, so it should be part of the zoning ordinance. I think that's pretty clear with what's going on, especially the setbacks and those types of things. I mean, again, the Animal Control Board doesn't have the ability to variance that sort of thing. It would have to, and if a structure is being constructed, it has to come to the zoning board anyway. So if you're looking for a recommendation, Mr. Chair, is that I would like to take this conversation to an appointed group of individuals to sit down and find out where we have commonality and then find out where we have differences and then to come back with something that we could have a public discussion on.
I was thinking too, just as the zoning ordinance is laid out today, if we leave kennel and then make it the definition to be commercial kennel, and then they will still be regulated as a conditional use in the A1 zone. I don't think that in the zoning ordinance we would want that dog run kennel, the 50-foot spacing between a house, because as Beth had said, and in a lot of situations, not only just within her ward, but I mean, your rear yard setback is 25 feet. So in a lot of the time you go to the extent of the rear yard setback. So you're not going to have 50 feet. Yeah, your neighbor will have 9 feet because they'll have their side yard setback. Or if they're in the rear yard, they'll have 25 again, but there's just no way really that you can ever accomplish 50. And I think we want to direct that back to the definition of a commercial kennel to say that business can't be within 50 feet of a house, even though it would be in the A1 zone or district, so it would be unlikely. And I think that we should look at, a lot of the time, the kennels, the outdoor kennels, are attached to storage sheds. And so just looking at it that way, that maybe it's just it's an incidental use to a accessory structure within the district, and allowing it that way. And then the number of pets, that should, I don't personally think that it should be regulated, but if it were, it should be definitely in the animal control section of the ordinance.
Quick follow-up comment on that in terms of rearranging that definition, and kind of Brandy's right on the same track as I am. We need to remove the word owned from the aspect of the commercial kennels, implying, because they do own the breeding stock, as it were, which is why I don't really like the idea of animals being property, but owned gives the connotation to people of that's their pet. And that's not always the case, or rarely the case in a commercial kennel. So, but I agree with Todd too, that this isn't going to be solved right now. The idea was to bring this forward, get everybody thinking about it, and then have a stepping point for us to move forward with this. And I think we've already started that conversation. We have some help with, some definitions. Brandy's on the right track with the way my thought process was going. And so I see Liam's had his hand up forever, so I'm going to shut up for a minute.
I just want to have some sort of an executive summary or plan before we break tonight. I'm looking at the statute. If we just simply put the word commercial in front of kennel in Title 21, where it appears in the two places, right? It appears in the conditional use in Ag 1 or in the Ag District, and then in the definition. I mean, does that more or less solves that problem? And then we can then address, or the city council can address a limitation on the dogs as a function of individual ownership in the animal control unit.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Lee, I agree with that. That was the proposal we had come up with, was to scratch the word owned and put the word commercial in front of the definition of kennel in the zoning ordinance. But the problem with that is if Todd and others on the animal control board believes that non-commercial still needs to be regulated, by striking the word owned, that effectively unregulates them. And so it gives this board the power. That's why it's kind of an odd situation, because the animal control board doesn't believe there should be a hard number, but they don't have the power to recommend amending the zoning ordinance. Only you guys have that power. And so that's kind of where we're at. So I think we can all agree that there should be a stronger definition of commercial, and that commercial, at least at this point, should remain a conditional use in the ag zone. But I guess the open question as a community decision that needs to be made is whether or not there needs to be a limit on the number of pets, dogs or cats, that individuals can own non-commercially. And if so, if the answer is yes to that question, then there perhaps need to be another definition in the zoning ordinance as to where folks can live with more dogs, essentially.
Can we do it?
Matt, would there be a grandfather if that happened? Because a lot of people have say a certain number. They're going to probably have that certain number. Are we going to tell them then to get rid of their pets?
Well, technically, according to our current ordinance, you could read that as anybody with more than 3 or more dogs that lives anywhere but the ag zone without a conditional use in the ag zone is already in violation of our ordinance. So there's no grandfathering in existing violators.
Should we take a straw ballot to see where everyone stands on if their pets should be regulated or not?
I would recommend, again, Mr. Chair, I will make a motion and to have 3 individuals appointed from each individual board to sit down and talk this through, and everybody can have a little bit of time to digest and have the ability to express their point of view. And whether we're talking about a zoning issue or animal ownership issue, I think there's a wide variety of things, and I think there's multiple paths that be gone down. Again, it's not a simple fix, because We're talking about structures that are going to be constructed, and we're going to be talking about setbacks from different buildings. And if we're going to talk about allowing 10 or 12 or 15 dogs to be located on property, we need to be thinking about the health and welfare of those dogs and how they're being housed on that property. And if that housing has to happen to occur outside, what are the potential impacts for nuisances and those types of things on adjoining properties? So again, I think the question is I think if you can trust as the planning commission to give each board some representations, let them battle it out and come back with a recommendation. So there's my motion.
And could I suggest adding to that motion, even though I'm not on the board, I would like to see somebody add that we have representation from the city in terms of legal and, like, for example, Brandy, so that we have
Yes.
two people that can help us in the right direction.
We always want staff.
4 seconds.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on it, or do we want to vote on that motion? Yeah.
I would just add that this is we have a meeting. I keep saying we. For some reason, I've gotten really entwined with the Animal Control Board. The Animal Control Board has a meeting in January, and those are usually much lower key than these meetings. It's usually just the board, and so I would suggest that whoever decides to be the three that are from the Plan Commission, they could just come to our meeting at the Animal Control Board's meeting at the Police Department in January and continue this discussion.
Matt, is that online, on Teams, or do you have to be in person?
No, we do. I do facilitate a Teams meeting. I usually just bring my computer, and one or two people will usually Teams in, but usually it's just the board but the board and myself typically.
I think, Mr. Chair, as part of my motion that we act on, I just think my preference would be to find 3 people, and so that we don't have a quorum of any board, so that we can have a very frank conversation amongst sides, and let that chips fall where they may, and then come out with a conversation from that.
Yeah.
It would be 2 then from the Animal Control Board then. So
Fair enough.
Less than a quorum.
Fair enough.
Mr. Chairman, just for scheduling purposes, would it be fair to request 3 Planning Commission members to volunteer for this endeavor yet this evening by name?
What day in January are we talking?
Well, I guess given Todd's motion, it actually would have to be then a different day. It could be the same day as the meeting, but it wouldn't have to be now. It's not going to be the same day as the Animal Control Board's meeting, because it won't involve the entire board. It'll just be 2 members of the board.
I volunteer, Todd.
Thank you.
Is that how it works? Should I volunteer Liam then? Todd did amend his motion. Diana, do you want to second his amended motion?
Yes, I will second the amended motion.
Okay, we have a motion, or an amended motion on the table right now.
No, for discussion, do we really need a motion?
I think as a formality, it's not breaking any rules that they memorialize it this way, unless, Matt, you disagree?
There's no reason they can't make a motion and approve a motion.
Sounds good.
I
You
like
guys
to
are-
sign things.
You're making my my minutes messy.
Sorry.
Is there any further discussion on that? I mean, I think that's a good idea to get a group together and try to hash this out. I mean, right now we don't know the time or place, but we can email back and forth, and staff can help us with that, and we can find something that works with our schedules, and and with the animal board schedule, so we can find a time that works. And I like Todd's idea of it not being at a quorum, so that it can be completely, worked out. And so I think that's a good idea. Is there any other discussion, or should we vote on it?
Call the question.
Oh, God, Todd, if you call the question, then we have to vote on that.
Okay, all right, then, if somebody, then let's just, okay, I'm just trying to push the chairman.
All right,
Let's just vote.
let's get a vote.
Aye.
Okay. Brink,
Aye.
Oletsky,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes,
and thank you for saving me with that, Diana.
you're
Culhane,
welcome.
Hanson,
Yes.
Kays.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Item 7 is open public comment. Did we receive any?
No,
Doesn't look like it. All right, any new business? Item 8.
none that I have.
Number 9, any old business?
None.
Yes, I have something to bring up.
Go ahead.
These little hands that Beth just showed us, which are obviously there now that I see it. Should we start using those on the Board of Adjustment and the Plan Commission as a regular procedure? It
What?
seems to be quite effective.
One thing with those is if we get more than about 9 people on, I don't see everybody. Because like right now, looking at the screen, I can see people with their hands up. But if there's more people logged in, I don't necessarily see their hands up. I mean, staff might be able to see it,
It
and they can let me know.
filters. It filters
Okay.
them in. Like, so if they're being active, then it'll bring them into the main screen.
Well, if it's good, if it would work out, I think it's a very gentlemanly way to go about. It's sometimes you start talking and someone else does. I think that would really be helpful in our process. Just a thought. I don't think we have to vote on that.
No.
No, I would just add that as somebody who attends all of the council meetings on Teams, it's really effective.
Chair?
Right.
It's really good.
But, okay, so we
Yeah.
could get like maybe Jeff, like a laptop in front of us. Jeff, I see what you were saying with that, because when I'm presenting, you don't see that.
Right.
So if we maybe got you a laptop or something.
Right, yeah. Normally when the agenda's up, I don't see who's on the meeting, or I can't see hands. But I mean, I think that'd be a good thing if we found a way to make it work.
I think this always remains even when you're presenting.
Oh,
Chair?
okay. Let me try that.
Before we recess, I'll do the dog stuff if you want. I don't
They went away.
I don't have to, but if you're looking for volunteers, I'll do it.
Yeah, and I was just joking with volunteering you because you volunteered Todd. But yeah, I think whoever wants to be a part of it, certainly, I think that would work. Yeah, so we got 2 volunteers. Sounds like.
And
Yeah.
And what I was thinking too is that Matt and I could work together on sending out some polls to see who's available. And then from that, because if somebody's gone at a certain date, that works out.
I like that idea. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll just include all the members, and then he'll include the animal control board, and we'll go from there. So staff will help coordinate that. And if we can find a date that works for Liam and Todd, we'll keep you guys as number 1 and 2.
Sounds good. Is there any other old business? Is there any reason to go into executive session? I will adjourn the meeting.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Yep, Merry Christmas.